Welcome to the Pot.Live podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G. This podcast is all about connecting the community with the thought leaders of business and entertainment in the cannabis industry. As this industry expands and becomes more and more mainstream, we want to educate and entertain our listeners and become your choice and voice for all things cannabis. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. Listeners, are you looking for the only one-stop online platform in the cannabis industry? Then you have to check out MJ.com. MJ has it all. Medical and professional news and trends. Get your medical card. Over 150 free workouts for your health and fitness. VIP membership. 2 different gaming apps to win cash and prizes. Find your local dispensaries. Learn about the latest strains and search for your career in the marijuana industry. And don't forget to get your favorite lab-tested CBD products delivered straight to your front door. It's all at MJ.com. Welcome to another episode of the Pot.Live podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G, and today we have a special guest. Mr. Jeff Mascio is the CEO of Cannabis One, which is adding value to different cannabis companies. They are redefining their traditional vertically integrated seed-to-sale business model, and they bring proven business experience to cultivators, retailers, and brand manufacturers. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Give everybody a little background on who you are, and then we'll jump into the, what your background is, and then we'll jump into the actual company. I just want you to know that we have an amazing listener group that are beginners to the industry. We have seasoned veterans, we have investors, we have business owners. So kind of tackle it from, some people that don't know what you do, even to the seasoned veterans that do understand what you do if you can. But go ahead.
I am the current CEO of Cannabis One. We are what is termed a multi-state operator that is fully vertically integrated, based in Denver, Colorado, but trade publicly on the Canadian Securities Exchange under CBIS. So we are actually a public company out of Canada due to the restrictions in the U.S., but we operate in currently 5 states. The states are Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, and California. The House of Brands is our primary focus, but we have a very successful retail presence that is corporate stores are owned under the Joint brand that are our retail concept. But we just recently acquired, or I would say more of a merger of equals, One Cannabis Group, which is also a Colorado-based company that has a franchise model under the Unity Road name. So that franchise model is a model that we were targeting in the next 3 to 5 years at Cannabis One, but with the progress that One Cannabis Group has already made in that franchise space, we're excited to be able to expand that retail presence and have the pull-through or the increased velocity of our retail for that, our primary focus, which is really the house of brands of the cannabis industry, much like a InBev or a Constellation Brands in alcohol. So we've been focusing primarily on bringing products to market and having the presence of our various 8 brands in excess of, I believe we're in over 1,000 retail dispensaries today in those 5 states that I just alluded to. So we are also in a cultivation space, so considered seed to sale, where we actually touch the plant from the very beginning of its inception. And then we move into the extracted space where we pull out all of the various cannabinoids and plant terpenes that we then construct into the various brands that we have, which span the gamut of topicals, of vaporizers, flower itself that we grow in an organic style and then vacuum seal and distribute under the Fleur brand in Nevada. And then we also have Cheech's Stash, which is a product that obviously is sponsored or owned by, and we are the exclusive manufacturer of, for Cheech Marin, if you recall Cheech and Chong, popular in the 80s, if you will. We've had a good bit of success in our expansion of the 8 different brands, which I was explaining are the flower, topicals, vaporizers, and edibles under the Evergreen brand and edibles under the Hanu brand. And Evergreen is out of Nevada and the Hanu is out of Washington. So that's kind of it in an overview of the positioning of Cannabis One at this point. So we're still in control of the entire vertical, needing to continue to control our supply chain, if you will, because it is still a new emerging industry. And we've got the supply chain is still not as solidified as we'd like to see before we go ahead and walk away from, say, cultivation, which we believe is going to be commoditized over the next couple of years, if you will.
Yep. So walk everyone through the roll-up process. So basically, you're acquiring companies, adding value, and then either have a recurring revenue model or exit them or sell them. What is the benefit to being a public company, the ability you have to acquire these companies since you're a public company versus being a private company?
Cannabis is a very capital-intensive business because it is very much brick and mortar, and the cost to expand the business is quite high. So being a public company allows us the access to capital, which gives us that advantage to go out and make acquisitions that are both accretive to top and bottom line using our stock as a currency. So giving up equity in the company also brings in partnerships with those acquisition targets that aren't necessarily looking to exit the business, but really looking to partner up with a larger entity that has a little bit more critical mass. So our roll-up strategy is more of an acquisition of brands that have a presence in their local jurisdiction. So for instance, we acquired the Hanu brand up in Washington back in early part of the year, right after we went public in February of 19, and they have positioned themselves as a leader in the Washington market as a manufacturer and brand. And that's very difficult to do in Washington because in Washington, there's 1,300 manufacturers that are going into only 500 dispensaries. So there's a supply side imbalance there that makes it very difficult to succeed as a manufacturer. So we realized that if you're succeeding in Washington in that environment, that you must be doing something right. And what we did find is their products are second to none, and their distribution and penetration is as such that we believe that it was a good acquisition, which allowed us the presence, or the shelf space, as I like to call it, in those dispensaries in Washington. So our business model, like that of like an InBev, is to control 40% of the retail shelf space, which will give us between 20 and 30% of the revenue if we're able to control that shelf space. And we found that if we have a presence in a dispensary of one brand, like for instance, using the Hanu brand as an example, then the other 8 brands that we represent would be able to, we can distribute them into the Washington market through our presence of the Hanu brand. So we're still making those acquisitions in various states that are really rolling out the cannabis industry as they come online and has various brands begin to penetrate their local market. We're interested in rolling them up into the umbrella, if you will, and ultimately becoming that house of brands that really brands the industry. And in the likes of, say, use alcohol as an example, when you think of the alcohol industry, it's true of any industry. If you think of any industry, it's the brands that make up that industry that really identifies what the industry is. And we believe that's the area we are in cannabis over the next 24 months to 36 months, is the brands that are going to be identifiable with the industry will begin to really shape what the industry looks like. And that's what we're looking to acquire, is those brands that have really made themselves relevant in their local jurisdiction. And then we can use that penetration as an opportunity for us to distribute the rest of our products into those various dispensaries.
Great. So everything's retail right now because basically you can't sell anything online when it comes to the flower. So basically you're sticking with retail acquisitions at this time?
We are looking at various delivery options. Like for instance, in California, delivery is popular, but it is not a national thing, it's not nationally legal, if you will, meaning even in areas like Colorado and Washington, it's still not possible to deliver. So yes, we're primarily focused on the brick and mortar, but we have the option to order online and pick up in store. And then the areas where it is legal, you can order online and then delivery. We're also looking at, in our acquisition strategy, while I was out in the MJ Biz conference just this last week, I had a couple of meetings with a company that has developed a delivery service that is very attractive to us. So we are looking at that as a potential acquisition and expansion option. Is we believe that the delivery is going to be a significant part of the way cannabis is distributed. But one thing that we have found, similar to alcohol, is it's not as prevalent as in other industries. In alcohol, and it seems to be in cannabis as well, the consumer seems to want to actually go to the store to do their shopping of cannabis and alcohol.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Sorry, what is the user behavior as far as, people being embarrassed to go to a dispensary since it's not so mainstream yet and people still think of it as a drug or has a bad reputation, like they're afraid? Would they rather get it delivered? Are you seeing any growth in home delivery, or is it still stagnant where people want to go in, like you said, to the retail locations?
Oddly enough, those that we're getting to experience where delivery is possible are actually coming through the brick and mortar retail to start with. So in Canada, however, there's really strong delivery only, but we're not finding the same strengths here in the United States. California has a lot of delivery that's fairly strong, but those delivery services seem to be playing somewhat in the black and gray areas and aren't 100% licensed and staying in 100% licensed vertical. So it's been a challenging space, but I think the consumer is still really looking to shop for cannabis in the same way they shop for alcohol, and that is go into the store for their shopping experience. Yeah, and it's their local retail outlet or their local dispensary that the shopper frequents rather than, the one-time shopping experience and then never return. Return customers are about 60% in our retail establishments.
Yeah, I find it all very interesting. So Jeff, I want to jump back to your personal background. I see that you have a financial industry background. I have the same thing. Basically, right out of college, went into the corporate world. Can you just, for the entrepreneurs out there, can you give a little snapshot into what corporate life was like for you, and now being more of an entrepreneur, even though you are, a public corporation, being an owner of a company or shareholder of a company as opposed to just being an employee in that corporate world, how you're wired and maybe how you think about both against each other?
Yeah, fair enough. So I spent the better part of the last 2.5 decades in the financial services industry in the U.S., starting out as a broker, if you will, at Merrill Lynch. And then in 2005, went independent and started my own company that ultimately was private equity and hedge fund management. And then in 2015, started a hedge fund that was Bertram Capital Finance, which the primary goal was to fund the cannabis space. And I had no desire at that time to do anything more than really investment in the area, into the space. But it became very clear that the time I was spending to really, babysit or pay attention to the investment we were making in cannabis became a full-time job. And then in 2016, sold my asset management business to focus primarily on the cannabis industry. And I can tell you that the differences are staggering in the industries. But the interesting thing about the cannabis space is you have two, at least when we started out, you had two types of people that were really in the industry. Those that were real risk takers, that were looking for the opportunity and willing to take that risk. And then those that were already sort of in the industry illegally, if you will, or in a medical capacity. And what we're seeing as we move forward from the industry is a lot more very talented individuals that are not just risk takers, but are the more traditional aspect of corporate America. We've built at Cannabis One now a very, I would say, expansive across 5 different states infrastructure that requires all of the necessary bureaucracy, if you will, as any other corporation. And in fact, probably more so just because it's so labor intensive. So it is becoming a very, I would say, traditional business in that sense, but the risks and the, attraction to entrepreneurs is still probably the most attractive industry that we see today. Up until now, it's been the fastest growing industry in the history of mankind, which is a pretty staggering statement given the 90s growth of the internet. So we still seeing a lot of attraction by those that are still looking for that American dream, if you will. And I think that the opportunity in the industry is really just getting started. If you look at an industry and want to quantify it by where that growth curve, if you will, that hockey stick, if you will, shape, I think we're just about to enter into that very steep growth. And I think we'll see that if we see the federal government's prohibition of cannabis abolished in the next 12 months, which we believe is the case. We don't think that the current status of a Schedule I substance, which is obviously not correct for the no therapeutic use whatsoever of cannabis, is absolutely not the case. And we see that changing. But the industry is really evolving into that of a very traditional industry that requires all of the same infrastructure that any other, like that, say, alcohol would require. And that's what is building or is developing as we speak. And then the attraction by those more conservative individuals, we believe that the industry is going to start seeing a lot more of the corporate America type of individual coming to the industry. And we've already started to see that in Colorado and in states such as Nevada. But the rest of the country and the world, if you will, is still kind of watching from the sidelines, wanting to see what happens on a federal level. But we really do see once that federal prohibition is abolished, it becomes just like the alcohol space.
Do you think that the marijuana federal legalization will be a hot button topic in the upcoming presidential campaigns?
You know, we have reason to believe that sources close to the White House that it is absolutely front and center in many ways. That is not only it's really the only bipartisan issue that has really no pushback, and not too many naysayers exist right now in cannabis. It more seems to be a political, how is the positioning of cannabis going to be used in this election politically? So that being said, if we know that, or if we assume that the positioning in cannabis is all, you know, a jockey for political gain in this election, then we should see some activity or some changes occur between now and the 2020 election. And case in point, we already saw the bill pass that really is an abolishment of the prohibition of banking, if you will. The real movement that we're looking to see is Congress taking and removing the status of cannabis as a Schedule I substance, and then giving it to the states as a states' rights. And that's really seems to be the momentum. And when there's 72% of the American people believe that cannabis is a states' rights, it's only a matter of time before the American people get their way, and that becomes the trajectory, if you will. And it's really been following that of alcohol. And alcohol, as you recall, when the states like Tennessee and Kentucky were fighting against prohibition of alcohol, that's really the same type of situation that was happening with the states of like Colorado and Washington against the federal government in cannabis. And really it probably sifts itself out in the same way. But it's just a matter of time, we believe, that the federal government takes and removes their position as a Schedule I substance.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And I think within the next 12 months, by the end of 2020, we're going to see a completely different landscape. So I agree with you there. Please tell the listeners, where can they learn more about Cannabis One? What is your website? How can they get in touch with your team if they have any more questions?
Yeah, so our website's cannabisone.life. And we're also publicly traded on the CSE, as I mentioned before, under CBIS, and then on the OTC in the U.S. under CAAOF. And you can reach our investor relations at info@cannabis.life. And also the website will give you our phone number to reach our investor relations.
Great. Jeff, before we finish up, give our listeners something that and I'm talking about the overall cannabis industry, something you're concerned about and something that really excites you going forward.
You know, what we're concerned about and excited about at the same time is what's happening down in Mexico. And Mexico right now is looking at how to go about shaping their laws for the cannabis industry. And the initial draft that came out a couple of months ago really had some areas in there that we were a little bit concerned about. That was really, they didn't want to allow branding. And we ultimately got the opportunity to go down through our partners at Factor Verde and really sit down with the Senate in Mexico and help them shape the legislation that we believe that's going to be released in its final form in April. And we really believe that our involvement and the U.S.'s move forward with the USMCA treaty, we're hoping to be able to get cannabis as part of that treaty, and then free trade in cannabis across between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. So if we're able to accomplish that, we believe that that's really exciting and something that we are hoping to see. And there's really no reason in my mind that that's something that all three countries shouldn't get behind, because it really does hold well to moving cannabis to that being an ag product like coffee or any other product that's just grown and exported. So that's fairly exciting and also troubling at the same time if rules and regulations are not dealt with sensibly.
Jeff Mascio, CEO of Cannabis One, thank you so much for being our guest. I really appreciate you taking the time. You have a lot going on. It's pretty impressive. Everybody check out cannabisone.life. Check out the website and get more information. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. And to all of our listeners, we will see you next time on the Pot.live podcast. And don't forget, keep sharing these episodes. Share them with all your friends. Share them with your family. Put them on social media. That's how companies like Jeff and ourselves get to accelerate this industry towards full stream legalization and education for everybody. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on the Pot.live podcast. If you are into the recreational side of the cannabis industry, yes, stoners, I'm talking to you, then thepot.com is the online and mobile destination for you. That's right, THEPOT.com, thepot.com. Where else can you find the exclusive Pot Mate of the Month? Take a pot quiz and win prizes. Scroll through hilarious memes and jokes and check out the latest podcasts, news, and trends, all while having your own profile and voice in the pot.com forum. Visit thepot.com today and get lit.